Hi everybody, today I will be presenting on the ESIA I conducted for a 30 megawatt solar PV power plant to be built in a remote region of Togo, one of the poorest countries in the world. So to give you some background on the region in which this project is proposed to be constructed, the host country is Togo, which according to the IMF is the 10th poorest country in the world and has one of the lowest electricity deficits among all countries in West Africa, with only 28% of all the country's citizens having access to electricity. The West African average is 40%, so Togo is even further below this low standard. The country supplies 90% of its energy from its neighbor to the west, Ghana, and 70% of their energy portfolio comes from fossil fuels. In 2018, the Togolese government created an electrification strategy, which they hope will bring millions of its citizens out of the dark. The goal of this project is for electricity to reach 50% of Togo's 7.5 million citizens by 2020, 75% by 2025, and achieve universal access of 100% by 2030. Togo also hopes to make renewable energy 50% of its energy mix by 2030. But due to being one of the poorest countries in the world, Togo needs financial assistance from other funders to make this a reality. Therefore, the country joined an initiative of the World Bank called Scaling Solar, which brings together a suite of partners to make privately funded, grid-connected solar projects operational within 2 years. The project I am discussing today is the first utility-scale solar project being built due to this initiative in Togo, and is hopefully the first of 300 more to follow, which is the goal. This project is a public-private partnership between the Togolese government and the funder Global EC, which is an independent power producer in Africa, who's financed by UK and Norwegian stakeholders. The joint agreement to build this project was signed in December of 2019 between the Togolese government and Global EC. So let's get into specifics about the project itself. The location of this 30 megawatt solar power plant will be located on 159 acres of land, about 2.2 kilometers away from the nearest town of Tandjouare, which is located in northern Togo. The next closest cities are Bologu, 6.7 kilometers away to the east, and the 10th largest city in Togo, Dapaong, 20 kilometers away to the north. The project will involve building a 1.3 kilometer long transmission wire to connect to the Mango-Dapaong transmission line, which runs along the N1 highway, north to south. This will be the means to connecting to the national grid. The town in which the project site is located in, Tandjouare, has a population of roughly 117,000 people and a population density of 124 kilometers squared, which isn't very dense. 98.6% of its residents live in rural areas, and the economy is characterized by agro-pastoralism. Farmers use subsistence agriculture methods like slash and burn to farm, and grazers have pastures. This site near the small northern town of Tandjouare in northern Togo was selected because of several optimal conditions. The climate conditions for solar technology at the site are perfect. There's an abundance of solar radiation and cloud coverage is rare. It also gets minimal precipitation, and there are few trees or geography features which would block the sun. The land is very flat. In addition, you don't have to worry about degrading the land because it is already of very poor quality. There's little vegetation, poor soil quality, and low biodiversity in the area to be worried about. In addition, this region is in dire need of electrification. Only 1.3% of Tandjouare's residents have access to electricity, and their incidence of poverty is 94.5%. To summarize, these residents live in rural poverty and lack many basic amenities like clean drinking water, sanitation, healthcare, and educational buildings. And lastly, the low population density will minimize the number of residents who will be physically displaced by the project. This project is being funded by Global EC, as stated before, and it will cost around $30 million US. The solar plant's lifetime is expected to last 25 years. Togo has a national act similar to United States NEPA that will regulate this project and has a couple significant institutions which will also oversee it, stated here. The timeline of the project will last no more than 1 year, from signing of the development to its fully functioning operation. In addition, the construction phase will require about 100 manual workers and 50 manual workers during the operations phase. The local residents and displaced people will be given priority in being offered these employment opportunities. This is the full timeline I composed for the project. As you can see, the actual social impact assessment process will take 3 months, which includes the 60-day comment period and will end in April 2020. The construction will take 7 months from April to October and will take about 1 to 2 months to be connected to the national grid and commissioned. The plant will be operational as of December 2020. Again, the process will take no longer than 12 months. There are a couple existing environmental concerns and controversies which need to be noted. In the country of Togo, deforestation and desertification have been a huge issue. Historically, deforestation has been mainly caused by the prominent form of subsistence slash-and-burn agriculture in the country. Between 2000 and 2005, Togo had one of the highest deforestation rates in the world, even greater than Brazil's Amazon rainforest. And since 1990, Togo has lost 43.6% of its forests. Strip mining for minerals has also caused a significant amount of deforestation in parts of the country. This has led to increased desertification and soil erosion, which in turn has led to the loss of biodiversity and soil fertility. This is especially hit hard in regions which depend on agro-pastoralism, like our town of Tandjouare, because using the land is how they survive and make a living. In addition, Togo is in the middle of a political crisis. There's a growing opposition party against the current reigning political dynasty, and protests began in August of 2017, sparked by their last election. Political controversies make economic stability and country development much more difficult, so this might factor into the future plans of Togo's national electrification strategy, which is fueling this project. I performed extensive literature review before conducting this project's ESIA, and I found 3 studies which were most pertinent to this one's research. The first notable one was of an ESIA on a 100 megawatt solar power plant constructed in Nigeria. Like our study community, this project was located in an area with a large need for electrification in a small remote rural town in Africa. The study concluded that there were minimal social impacts from project construction, and any impacts they did find were countered by appropriate mitigation efforts, like helping rehabilitate the 250 displaced people. The second study was on the construction of a 50 megawatt solar power plant in another small remote rural town in Egypt. One interesting mitigation measure they noted was the repairing of local roads for residents. In exchange for any social disruptions which occurred due to the project, they promised to pave roads for this small town, which I found pretty interesting. The third most notable study was the construction of a 66 megawatt solar power plant in a remote place in South Africa. This project was also funded by Global X, so I thought that it would be very useful to seeing how social impacts and mitigation would look similar to our study community. The South African project recently released a newsletter describing how the operational solar plant is benefiting the environment and supporting the local community through the project's mitigation efforts noted in their ESIA. Some of these include building 5 fully equipped and furnished mobile classrooms for the town, funding extra math and science lessons in the 2 local schools, and creating an enterprise development program, which helped displaced farmers get back on their feet with crop production. I really enjoyed reading this because it felt like a progress report on the solar plant, seeing exactly how much effort was still going into mitigation and monitoring. In this case, Global Ec gets an A+ for the results. I completed a comparative diachronic study with the comparative community of Metahara in Ethiopia. This town recently underwent the construction of a 100 megawatt solar power plant in 2018 and documented their results very well. I picked this community due to the similarity of the nature of the project, geographic conditions, and demographic conditions of the city to our impact community of Tandjouare. Both cities are small, remote, and rural, and located in a region with poor environmental quality, grassland savannas with few trees or vegetation, poor soil quality, and low biodiversity. The land is also flat and has few geographic features nearby which could shade the solar plant. Both areas are blighted by deforestation and desertification. In addition, both are near national parks, which brings in traveling tourists to the area, which impacts their regional economy. The 2 cities are also very similar in demographic characteristics. They have low population density, and most of their residents are categorized as living in rural areas. The Metahara project will displace 152 people, and our impact study will displace a similar amount of 102 people. Both regions have low access to electricity, and the main form of income and employment is agro-pastoralism. After the solar plant was developed in Metahara, they recorded a few social impacts which one would expect, like displacement of residents and traffic, but also some that I wouldn't have thought of. For example, they recorded an unexpected in-migration of job seekers from other regions. When designing my ESIA, I made sure to record that employment opportunities will be offered first to displaced people and local residents before giving the jobs to people who traveled to Tandjouare looking for work. Some of Metahara's mitigation strategies were very smart, like creating a community health and safety plan and framework resettlement plan. Both of these ideas influenced my own mitigation and monitoring strategies I created for Tandjouare. The existing socioeconomic environment in Tandjouare can be most simply characterized as rural poverty. The town's population of approximately 117,000 people has a low population density because 98.6% of them live in rural areas. There is an increasing population rate, birth rate, and fertility rate in the region, one of the highest in the world. Only 1.3% of its residents have access to electricity, and the majority of residents lack basic human amenities like water, sanitation, healthcare, and education. The economy is agro-pastoralist, meaning most people depend on farming or grazing for income, employment, and survival. In addition, tourists also come through the town because of its close proximity to 2 national parks, Gradus des Noc and Fosse aux Lions. This is a boost to local trade and craft manufacturing in the town. However, this background demographic information needs to be updated. There is very minimal information about the residents of Togo, nevertheless a small rural town in a remote place of it. The country's primary data is not updated thoroughly or regularly. In fact, the last census they took in 2010 was the first census Togo had taken in 29 years. In summary, we need to complete more baseline surveys before conducting this ESIA to get a more updated, accurate, and thorough understanding of the local community. The study community we'll focus on is the 102 residents physically displaced by the project and includes a 10-kilometer radius around the site for a total of 1,687 people in the ESIA study community. The scoping and public notice process will begin in February 2020 with a census of the study community to obtain primary demographic data of the residents. This census will also include a section notifying people about the project and asking for their opinions, questions, comments, and concerns about it. These remarks will be key conversation starters in the community forums to follow. We will have to employ key informants in this process of data collection, using native Togolese citizens to help translate and communicate this information to residents. Seeing a fellow Togolese citizen's face representing the project instead of my face will probably build more trust between the residents and project developers. Next, I will identify key stakeholders in the community who have a greater amount of influence over decision-making, such as community leaders, elders, chiefs, or religious people. I will also need SIA staff and key informants who know the community well and attest to the local culture. I will hold the first community forum in March 2020 with all leaders and residents, and the 60-day comment period will begin. During the next 2 months, I will be employing 3 focus group discussions, one for male leaders and elders, one for male youth, and one for women, to make sure that every social group's needs and voices are heard and represented equally. I will also be employing 2 types of questionnaire surveys, the first being a citizen-developed needs assessment survey, and the second being a leaders' needs assessment survey. For the first one, I will need volunteer citizens to help with the deployment of this. After the feedback from these 2 methods are recorded, I will conduct the social impact assessment and hold a community forum to discuss and finalize the project decision, marking the end of the 60-day comment period. When calculating the predicted social impacts of this project, I referenced the textbook's 28 social impact assessment variables on page 36. These include looking at the categories of population impacts, community and institutional arrangement, communities in transition, individual and family level impacts, and community infrastructure needs. I noted a few key indicators under these categories which I thought were to be most prevalent in this study. When predicting the social impacts of this project, I utilized an impact risk assessment matrix, the one on this slide, which let me evaluate risk of the top 8 most significant social impacts by combining the severity and likelihood of each event. This gave me the top 8 lists of social impacts, ranging from medium-high risk to low risk. The most significant medium-high risk was expected, the displacement of existing inhabitants. And the second most significant medium risk, the loss of land and source of income and employment, was also expected. Other low-medium risks I expect are the stress of infrastructure, like on local roads, and the disruption of local cultural settings due to foreign project developers. The last 2 impacts are actually positive, stating that this project will create jobs for local residents in need and also increase tourism to the area, with increased electrification and improved roads that the project will give in their mitigation strategies. After studying other projects in the comparative community, I have created 3 most significant mitigation strategies to minimize any of these negative social impacts which will occur. The first strategy is a resettlement plan, which will grant displaced people new land of equal area and value as their lost land. The developers and local government will be responsible for this. The second strategy is compensation and reinsertion measures. This will compensate displaced people for any economic losses they may have incurred due to this project, like losing their crop field or any moving expenses. The developers and local government will be responsible for this. The third mitigation strategy is continued public consultations. This aims to keep a line of communication always open and active between the project developers and the community, using key informants. This will make sure that any of the community's needs and grievances at any point in the project's lifetime can be easily communicated to and addressed by the developers. I also designed 4 main monitoring strategies for this project, influenced by my research on other studies. The first strategy is internal monitoring and auditing. One of the regulatory agencies for this project will create a special implementation committee for this project and will be responsible for overseeing the project's resettlement and compensation plans. The second strategy is external monitoring, and they will basically be checking the work of the internal monitoring to make sure that they're doing what they say they're going to do. The third strategy is a 5-year census, and this will be the oversight of Togolese and local governments and requires a census to be performed every 5 years in the study community to ensure that residents are rehabilitating and successfully adjusting to any disruptions due to the solar plant. This will also monitor any long-term disruptions due to the plant. These censuses will measure all population impacts such as magnitude change, influx and outflux of workers, occupational and employment statistics, and other variables such as tourism and quality of life among displaced people. The fourth strategy deals with environmental monitoring and requires an ESMP to be created, which will be the oversight of project developers. When creating this ESIA, I was frequently referencing the 8 international principles of SIA, and after analyzing all of them, this project and report does meet them, and I rationalize in this table why. This is my works cited, and thank you for listening.